I start with something that's called the riddle of the Messiah, because in the old days I used to have to really try to convince Christian people the value of the nation of Israel and the value of the Jewish people and the value even of studying Jewish culture or any of those things. And the way I usually did that to start off with was this idea, this riddle that's called the riddle of the Messiah. I'll do it with you very quickly, if I can remember it, and just to show you something, just to get your mind to begin to work. There is a riddle that comes, and I believe it goes something like this, if I can remember all of the lines. I am thinking about someone in history who left an indelible imprint upon mankind, upon the history of mankind. Without a miracle upon the womb of his mother, he could not have been born. As an infant, or he was taken into Egypt, he was taken into Egypt, number 2, to preserve his life. Number 3, as a infant, as a young son, he was called the Son of God. Number 4, he returned to the land of Israel, despised and rejected, hated by all those around him, a man of sorrows. That's 4. Number 5. Wait a second. See, I'm going to forget it. Number 5. Hated by all those about him, yeah. So number 5. A hatred so great that the Romans put him to death. That's number 5. Number 6. On the 3rd day, he came out of the tomb. And number 7, he will never die again. Now, usually when I say give all of those lines of that riddle to Christian people, and I say, do you know who I'm talking about? Everybody immediately raises their hand and tells me they're talking about Jesus. And when I tell them I'm not talking about Jesus, it greatly surprises them. But I'm actually not talking about Jesus. Let me show you. A person who was born by a miracle, without a miracle upon the womb of his mother, he could not have been born. In your minds, when we started the riddle, most of you went back 2,000 years ago to Joseph and Mary, and in a place called, in Hebrew, called Bethlehem, the house of bread, Bethlehem, and the birth of Jesus. Actually, my mind doubled in time. I went back 2,000 years before this. Also to 2 people. Their names were Abraham and Sarah. Oh, wait, hold on. I knew this would happen. Brenda?
Yes, are you on the other phone?
I'm teaching a class.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm teaching a class. I'll talk to you later. Yeah, bye-bye. So we go back to Sarah, Abraham and Sarah. And if we think about it for just a few minutes. If you know any Old Testament history, it's actually an unbelievable, remarkable story, because, you know, Joseph and Mary are not so old. Actually, the idea is Joseph was probably twice as old as Mary, and but they're not so old. But when we come to Abraham and Sarah, Abraham is 99 years old, and the story goes that the angel of his presence, God, came, sent a messenger, came to speak with Abraham, and told him, about this time next year you're going to have a son. And Abraham begins to laugh. He says, you know, this is kind of a ridiculous thing, because when we talk about Sarah, Sarah's old, and Sarah's never been able to have children. And of course, Sarah's listening to all of this. If you know anything about the life of Bedouin people, the tent is separated into the first part of the tent, you know, is to greet the visitors. That's actually the larger part of the tent. And then the second part of the tent is a living area, and then the ladies are even behind this, so they are behind a screen, but they can hear absolutely everything that's going on. And which is why in a minute the angel asks Sarah the question, why are you laughing? Because the text says actually Sarah laughed inside of herself. And now this is something that's peculiar to Judaism and peculiar to the rabbis, and we'll talk about this also. See, I have a hard time getting a class started because there's so many things to share, I just don't know where to start. I honestly do not know where to start. But there are different levels of interpretation in Judaism. None of them cross each other. None of them disagree with each other. It's just another level way of understanding the text. So a plain sense understanding of the text is Sarah laughed inside quietly. Okay, she was just laughing inside of herself. And you can imagine she's laughing. See, it's unbelievable. She says, actually, her conversation in a minute with the angel is she says, not only am I old, we can figure out what she's thinking. Not only am I old, but my Lord is old also. Abraham is an old man. What chutzpah, how dare he say to you, Sarah is old, because like he can do anything about it. That's the whole thing. As if he was, Abraham is talking like, oh, well, yeah, I can handle it, but Sarah's the problem. And he's 99 years old, like he could do anything. And but anyway, that's one level of understanding it. The other level of understanding it, or another level of understanding the text that the rabbis talk to us about, is that she laughed at her insides, at her own insides, because she had never been able to have children, even when she was very young, and that her womb was closed. So it's quite an interesting conversation. Now, to show you, just in a real brief illustration of how the rabbis take something very obscure like that and come out with a teaching on it. There is a small place in the Talmud, and it's very interesting. In the Talmud, it's going along and it's actually talking about business dealings and how an employer should pay his employees and the responsibility of the employees to the employer. And then all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, it inserts this little passage about Abraham and Sarah. And the question is, should I always tell the truth, no matter what? And the answer goes to this deal with Abraham and Sarah. Because when the angel begins to talk to Abraham again, he mentions that Sarah laughed, but he does not tell all of her words. Now, why doesn't the angel of God's presence tell all of Sarah's words? Because Abraham's feelings would have been hurt, and it could have caused problems between Abraham and Sarah as a husband and wife if he had known that Sarah's opinion of him was that he was such an old man that he couldn't do anything about it. So what's their answer? Of course you should always tell the truth, but to always tell the truth doesn't always mean tell everything that you know. If telling everything that you know, even if it's the truth, will mean that you hurt someone or that you cause them problems or something along those lines. In other words, think before you open your mouth. It's a very, very beautiful teaching in how they come to it. It comes under the layers of this text in the book of Genesis. It's quite interesting. Anyway, so they end up naming the son. In Hebrew it's Yitzchak, because Tzchak in Hebrew means to laugh. And Isaac's name literally means he will laugh. I look at this whole story sometimes as it's kind of like Abraham and Sarah are saying to God, why are you pulling this joke on us? We're 190 years old. Why are you pulling this joke on us? But the deal is that it is a joke. It begins the whole process of how God will redeem everything. And because, listen, without an Isaac, there would have been no Mary and Joseph in Bethlehem 2,000 years later. Isaac is the one that the scripture very clearly states through whom the promises pass, and is one of the patriarchs of the people of Israel. And without Isaac, there would have been nothing. So the entire nation of Israel is born through a miracle upon the womb of the mother. Okay?